Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Wednesday, January the 29th, 2025. On the show tonight, are you ready for the United States of AmeriCanada? Those tariffs are coming, and nothing in our country is going to stop them from coming. Maybe the first wave, and we'll explain that in a bit, but definitely the second wave is going to be coming. And I've got a philosophy behind this. I think I've figured out why. It's going to sound really effed up to you, but it goes back to something we discussed 2 or 3 years ago, and something my father talked to me about when I was a little kid going on fishing trips with him. I was 7 or 8 years old. We were sitting in a boat on some lake, a couple of hours from the city, 5 o'clock in the morning. And my dad would say, one of these days, son. Now, my dad was not a philosopher. He was not the smartest man in the world. He was a working man. But he listened well, and he listened to other people, and he was able to discern information from them, and it made sense to him. Not immediately, but over time, and he came up with his own theories. He said, one of these days, son, all of this is going to be the United States of America. They want our water. Now, that's what he said in 1972 or 1973, and that always stuck with me. I don't know why. Why would it? But not top of mind or anything. It wasn't always right here. It was in the back of my mind, and it just stayed there. And then you would think this vast landmass that we have, the second largest country, geographically speaking, on the planet behind Russia, with only 40 million people in it and a military that honestly can't protect it. Who's going to stop them from taking what we have because we say it's ours in a country that's not really a country? And you know that if you're a longtime watcher of this show, based upon what Doug Force and others have said to us about Canada not actually being a real country. It's still, technically speaking, a dominion of the United Kingdom. Could have been a real country back in 1931 had the proper papers been signed and delivered, but they're not. And the Constitution, by the way, the one that was signed and ratified, the one that we're under right now, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, had to be signed in the UK. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the prime minister at the time, came back with a photocopy of it. He didn't come back with a real copy. It was a photocopy. Why is that? Because our records are still in the vaults of the United Kingdom. Our police officers, our Army personnel, our Navy personnel, they all swear an oath to the Crown. Our law system, our justice system, it's always the Crown. The Crown, it's Crown land, it's Crown this, it's Crown that, it's the Crown. So where is Canada in all of this? I'm going to go more into this in just a second, and I want your comments on this. And please, if you're feeling emotional and angry about anything I've just said, take a minute, take a few deep breaths, count to 10, let your rational mind come back, and then respond. Okay? Because we have become so Americanized up here that at this stage of the game, with what Trudeau has done to us these past 9 years, I'm not really seeing a huge problem. But it wouldn't work the way Trump has been talking about it. At least I don't think it has. And Mark Carney, who is very well connected, as you know, with the globalist cabal and the World Economic Forum and the Green New Deal and Europe in general, he holds 3 passports, one in Ireland, one in the UK, and one in Canada. I understand, according to some sources of mine out east, that he's been talking. He's already been anointed the Liberal leader and next prime minister of the country, unelected, of course. And that seems to be perfectly fine with the normie crowd out there, which drives me crazy. But anyway, we hear he's been talking with some of the leadership of the European Union about forming an official sort of partnership with the European Union. So maybe these moves that Donald Trump has been making and everything he's been talking about for the past month is to head that off at the pass. But we're going to get into that. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you, as always, by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.com. Kevin and Anna just got back from Mexico, and they're ready and raring to go. Immune Gummies. Simplify your daily immune support with convenient and delicious Nano Silver Immune Gummies. Each serving contains powerful triple-action Nano Silver elderberry like that. Vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D3 to help supercharge your immune system. Safe and proven Nano Silver works alongside your body's immune system to help you stay healthy and strong for everything that life throws at you. It's cold and flu season, viruses flying around left, right, and center. You want to protect yourself and your family from that, so buck up your immune system. No additives, no chemical preservatives in this stuff. Immune Gummies, my friends. One of the great products from CanadaNanoSilver.com. That is CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you're looking for a retail location, you can find one over on the retail locations tab on the website here. There's 35 or 40 now all across the country. People are selling these products out of their basements and garages because they understand the value of it. If you would like to become a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Okay, I have no update on the Ostrich situation yet. Carrie Simpson hasn't gotten back to me today with what's going on there. We understand they're trying desperately to file a legal injunction to stop the cull of 400 ostriches at Universal Ostrich Farm in British Columbia. We don't know if that's going to happen. We do SaveOurOstriches.com, by the way. That's the website to go to for all of the information. We know there's 2 convoys leaving, one from Kelowna very early on Saturday morning. All of this information is on the website. The other one is leaving from Vernon, I think. Again, 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. Go to SaveOurOstriches.com. The only evidence these government bureaucrats have to go ahead with this cull is positive PCR testing from 2 dead birds on the property, which was taken a couple of weeks ago. They have nothing else to go on. We know all about PCR testing, but I thought I would go back a little bit. Remember Kerry Mullis? Everybody was talking about Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test. He died about 5 years ago from cancer, they say. But before he died, he explained everything we need to know about the PCR test and how it's never supposed to be used to diagnose anything or anybody. Here he is.
How do they misuse PCR to estimate all these supposed free viral RNAs that may or may not be there?
I think misuse PCR is not quite. I don't think you can misuse PCR. No, the results, the interpretation of it. See, if you can say, if they could find this virus in you at all, and with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It starts making you believe in the sort of Buddhist notion that everything is contained in everything else, right? I mean, because if you can amplify one single molecule up to something that you can really measure, which PCR can do, then there's just very few molecules that you don't have at least one single one of them in your body, okay? So that could be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful. But the real misuse of it is that you don't need to test for HIV. You don't need to test for the other 10,000 retroviruses that are unnamed also in the subject. See, somebody that's got HIV generally is going to have almost anything that you can test for because they have definitely been. HIV is a fairly rare virus. There's only 1 million of us out of 250, 300 million people in America that have that virus. So you have to get around, either your mother had to have it and pass it to you, or you have to really be paying a lot of attention to people that do have it and paying only attention to them and get a pretty good chance of getting it that way. It's hard to get it, but if you have it, there's a good chance you've also got a lot of other ones. Because you've been in the market for it's been possible for you to get a lot of. To test for that one and say that has any special meaning is what I think is the problem. Not that PCR has been misused. It's like. Is it an estimation? It's not an estimation. No, it's a really quantitative thing. tells you something about nature and about what's there, but it allows you to take a very minuscule amount of anything and make it measurable, and then talk about it in meetings and stuff like it is important. See, that's not a misuse. That's just sort of a misinterpretation. It is. No, there's very little of what they call HIV, and what's been brought out here by Phil Pott and Isai already. The measurement for it is not exact at all. It's not as good as our measurement for things like apples. An apple is an apple. You know, you can get something that's kind of like, if you got enough things that look kind of like an apple and you stick them all together, you might think it's an apple. But and HIV is like that. Those tests are all based on things that are invisible, and the results are inferred in a sense. PCR is separate from that. It's just a process that's used to make a whole lot of something out of something. That's what it is. But it's not. It doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that. That's what it's not.
Right. And that interview, by the way, well before the COVID pandemic. And so, yeah, they did misuse it. Or, sorry, they misinterpreted the results. Or they manipulated the results to get what they wanted. That's how they were able to tell you that you were sick, even though you had no symptoms. And the same thing is happening right now at the Universal Ostrich Farm in British Columbia. They're saying that those birds, all 400 of them, are sick and contagious and spreading H5N1, even though the farm is very isolated from everything in the area. And the birds are flightless, let's not forget. And the area is fenced, so the ostriches can't get out. But that's all they have. Now, the owners of the ostrich farm are saying whatever bird was sick is now getting better, and some never got sick to begin with. They're fine. They're healthy. Every single one of them on the farm right now, healthy. But yet, the BC government, because of these PCR tests, is going to come in on Saturday and kill all of the ostriches. Unless something miraculous happens between now and then, I will keep you up to date. Haven't said my hellos yet tonight. I apologize. Hello, Ellen, watching on Vancouver Island. Vicky is watching in Nova Scotia, way across on the other side of the country. Hello, Tony, watching on X in Calgary. Laura is watching tonight in Beausejour, Manitoba. Hello, Darlene, watching in Oak Lake. Elsie is watching tonight in Winnipeg. Lolita is watching in Winnipeg. Joyce is watching from just south of Winnipeg. A lot of Winnipeg, a lot of Manitoba tonight. Marta is watching on Vancouver Island. Christine's in Enola. Bernadine's in Calgary. Hello, Tammy, just south of Roblin, Manitoba. Bev is watching in Bracebridge, Ontario. Brian is watching from Prince Edward Island. And Sheila is watching from Oshawa, Ontario. On Facebook, on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, wherever. Oh, speaking of Rumble, let's go say hello. Notable, Crivier, Gary Goodman, Wanna Keeper, Chicken Hair, Esky Dogs, Mouth of the South is here tonight. Molly Guess 196-70803, Grease Goon, The Last Son, Louise, all of you guys, you are very important to this show as well. I don't want you to think I've forgotten you over there on Rumble. Let's get it out there, guys. Like and share to as many people as you possibly can. It's important to get this information out to normies. And if you want to talk about normie world, we'll get to that whole U.S.-Canada thing in just a second. And if you can put your normie cap on for a moment, and I know it's tough because once you've seen it, but try to put your normie cap on for a second. All right, just, I know it's tough. It's probably too tight. But try and put it on for just a second. And while you're doing that, I want to remind some people of something that's coming up next week. So these 15-minute cities, the whatever you want to call them, smart cities, well, they're planning them all over. As I've been saying, Maggie Hope Braun is doing a fantastic job with Kickley. She is going all across the country, letting people know how they can get out of this partnership with Kickley and with the Partners for Climate Protection and the Canadian Association of Municipalities. The Winnipeg River Planning District Development Plan Update Project. So there's an open house coming up on Saturday, February the 8th at Powerview School in Powerview. I'm laughing for a reason, and you'll see why in just a second. The Winnipeg River Planning District, comprised of the RM of Alexander and the town of Powerview Pine Falls, population 500 maybe, has been working to update its development plan and is now ready to share a first draft with the public. You're invited to attend the public open house to understand how the proposed changes will support community development. Learn about where future housing and businesses will be located. See how the plan's vision and policies will be implemented. Consult the plan's proposed maps to see how your property may be affected. Provide feedback about the draft plan. So obviously, this is another one of these United Nations ICLEI initiatives, right? And I want you to look at this map. This is the RM of Alexander, Manitoba. This is Lake Winnipeg. This is the east shore of Lake Winnipeg. This is Powerview Pine Falls right here. Bird River, Poplar Bay, Great Falls. The population, and this is a big area. I mean, I'm going to a little bit more. That's a huge area from the east side of Lake Winnipeg all the way out here to Point du Bois. That's about an hour and a half drive. This is a big area. Do you know how many people live in this area? I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm going to say about 3,000. And this is the entire rural municipality, not any one town. And there's no cities here either. And yet, for some reason, they need a sustainable development plan. So, guys, if you're in that area, it's at Powerview School, Saturday, February the 8th, between 1 and 3 o'clock. Be polite. Go and ask questions and see what they have to say about the United Nations, about ICLEI. Go check out what Maggie Hope Braun has been talking about. Find some questions to ask. And that's all on her website, kickley.ca, KICLEI.ca. Go there. Find out. There's all kinds of game plans that she's laid out on that website for you to take to meetings just like this one and ask the questions that you need to ask. And there's going to be a good chance that none of these town councilors or the Reeve are going to know what you're talking about. For real. What are you talking about, United Nations? I have absolutely no clue. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All right. Let's get on with it right now. Oh, and by the way, now that we're back into normie world here, I want to ask you, and yeah, I believe there's a plan, and I'll get to all of that stuff. We might have a special guest come on tonight. We might. I sent the invite. We'll see if he decides to accept. I'm sure he probably won't. If he does, I'll be surprised. But anyway. When you were a kid, now this is a Winnipeg thing, we used to go at least once a year to Grand Forks, North Dakota to shop. And they catered their tourism industry to Winnipeg people, to southern Manitoba people, Canadians, right? Hey, here you got some specials, dollars at par this weekend at JCPenney, whatever. And we'd all go, oh, let's go to Grand Forks. We'd go to concerts in Minneapolis. We'd go see baseball, football, hockey games in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It was a big thing. People got excited to go down there, even when the dollar went, I mean, what's that, at 68, 69 now? But even when the dollar was like that, we'd still, save a little extra. We'd go down very excited to go to the United States. Let me ask you what your favorite football team is. And I'm going to exclude people from Saskatchewan in this question because I know what you guys are going to say. But what's your favorite football team, especially for you in Ontario? I lived in Ontario for 12 years in different cities, London, Ottawa, Kingston, some time in Toronto. And in London, it was always the Buffalo Bills. Ottawa, same thing, Buffalo Bills. Kingston, it was the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, 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 Buffalo. And they would rather go see the Buffalo Bills play an NFL football game than go see the Toronto Argonauts play a CFL football game. CFL's dog shit. I don't forget about it. It's the NFL, man, the NFL. Your influences, pop culture-wise. What were your favorite shows in the past 20, 30 years? There might be one Canadian one in there, maybe. What was that one? The Trailer Park Boys? Everybody loved the Trailer Park Boys. But usually, the talk at the office or the workplace the next day after a Seinfeld episode was Seinfeld. We still speak that language. It's in our daily lexicon now, right? Friends, same thing. Happy Days back in the day. Fonzie, hey, we all know that. Does anybody quote Wayne and Schuster from the 1970s? I know we've had some great successes, musically speaking, and some of these bands actually stayed in Canada. Burton Cummings is a great example of that. I think Burton lives in Moose Jaw now, but he's got a home in Los Angeles. He spends half the year down there. If you want to get famous and rich, make it big, as an actor, as a musician, as a comedian, whatever, you go to the United States to do it. You don't stay in Canada. You might come back every now and again for a concert tour or the Junos or something like that. But then you go back home to Los Angeles or Miami or wherever it is that you've taken up your new residence. What does Canada have that the United States doesn't have? What makes us cling to this idea of Canada, of being Canadian? As I said earlier in the show, all of our police and military, they take an oath to the crown. Our justice system is the crown. Our lands are owned by the crown. Do you have a swell of pride regarding anything about Canada? Let's go back in time even a little bit more. The city of Winnipeg up until 1973, 1974 was a city surrounded by a lot of other little cities. St. Boniface and Transcona, the Kildonans, St. James, Assiniboia, Charleswood, Fort Garry. All of these were their own little cities. And then in 1973, and they all had their own city halls and their own downtowns. They all had that stuff. And then 1973, 74 comes around. They sign an agreement. They're going to be one big unicity. It was called the Unicity Project. And all of those towns incorporated themselves into Winnipeg. And you know what? You can still see those old city halls when you go through these parts of town in the old downtowns. But they've all been changed by now. I mean, a lot of those buildings have been altered. Some of them have come down. The streets have been rejigged. The parking's been rejigged. I think the old St. Boniface City Hall now is a library or a bank or a warehouse. And nobody seems to really, nobody goes, I live in St. Boniface. No, it's all about being in Winnipeg. So after a certain amount of time, would you lose your allegiance to the place you grew up, whether it was St. Boniface, Manitoba, Canada? Manitoba, that's another thing. If this does happen, if Trump imposes that economic pressure on us that will make our economic system collapse, and this is something we talked about 3 years ago, guys. I mean, I remember talking with many people on this show here. Our economy is going to fail. Our currency is going to fail. And what then? We're ripe for the picking. We've got all these resources. We've got lots of fresh water. We have got a lot of minerals in the ground that haven't even been looked at yet because of treaties that have been signed and just a lack of focus. I mean, Manitoba does not have to be a have-not province, but it is, because nobody can get any kind of licenses to go and dig. There's diamonds, there's gold here, there's nickel, there's cobalt, there's potash in Manitoba, there's oil and gas in Manitoba. This could be a huge have province, but nope. You can't get permits to do anything in Manitoba. Alberta, different. Saskatchewan, different again. Now, Quebec, in their next provincial election, is probably going to elect a separatist government, the Parti Québécois. They are leading in the polls right now, and they have been for the last few months. What does that mean? The Parti Québécois says that well, maybe not the second, but when they are elected, they will start formulating another separation referendum. Do you remember that? That one in the 1990s? I think it was 1995, 1996. We squeaked through that one with 50.1% of the vote. The people of Quebec, half of them nearly, wanted to leave Canada. The other half wanted to stay. 50.1. What does that tell you about the allegiance that Quebecers at least feel to Canada? No, it's Quebec first. Quebec all the way. They don't act like it economically, but definitely culturally they do. What about Alberta? Alberta, right now, is the only province that could sustain itself if it needed to, on its own, with its own natural resources, provided they had a port they could send their oil to. I believe what's going to happen is that Canada will be sold off in pieces. Not necessarily sold off like somebody is at auction. Manitoba, I'll take up 10, I hear 15, do I hear 20? It's not going to be like that. It's going to be, and I'm not even sure the configurations of the provinces are going to remain the same as we know them now, the shapes of each province. That could change as well. Borders are changing all the time. I said this last night. Unless, of course, that's worked out in a deal. Does Alberta leave? Do they take Saskatchewan with them? Do they take Manitoba? Do they then decide to remain independent as their own country, or do they join the United States? Or does Mark Carney go to them and say, hey, you know, the European Union really wants you guys in an economic and cultural partnership? What do you say about that? And I think Donald Trump knows about that, and I think that's why he's making moves like this. This is all about Pax Americana. This is about the greatness of the American society, and countries like that, empires like that, they've always wanted to expand. China wants to expand. They're doing it quietly. They're trying to buy up Canada hectare by hectare by hectare. The United States will simply put economic pressure on this country until it can no longer sustain itself economically. And then what? I don't know. I don't honestly know. Will Canada be absorbed into America, or will there be new treaties signed? Will the border move somehow? Remember, too, that 90% of the population of Canada, which is about 35 million people, all live within 100 miles of the Canada-U.S. border. And the only city in this country that's above that line is Edmonton, the only major city. That's it. So, I'm going to go to comments, and I'm going to ask you guys again, do you think that joining the United States or forming a new nation, the Republic of Western Canada or something like that, or Quebec or whatever, and what happens to the Maritimes, I have no idea. I would imagine they would join with Quebec or maybe the United States. I don't think the Maritimes and Newfoundland are capable of self-sustenance. I don't think that that's possible. I don't think they have all the resources they need. Eileen says, I can't listen to any more of this. So many blind spots, greed and prejudice too, thick yet here. I don't know what that means. Independence doesn't mean separation. Just get rid of the registered corp we know as Canada. Well, that's an interesting point that you make. A lot of people suggest the United States is a corporation. Any country, really, could be considered like that. Corporation with a de facto as opposed to a de jure government. Canada is not capable of defending its own resources. That's something that we should all realize and understand. And this is something, like I said, when my dad told me this years ago, it stayed with me in the back of my head. And occasionally I would think about it when the subject came up, and it was very rare. You go, how is it that Canada, with forces, right now, our forces are the weakest they have ever been in our lifetimes? Weak in terms of personnel and equipment, morale, everything. Do you think that 50,000 full-time soldiers and reserves could defend the borders of this country? No, it's massive. It's huge. It is, like I said, the second largest country on the planet, geographically speaking. We don't have nuclear weapons. I don't know if we really have any weapons at all. And everything we did have, we gave to Ukraine. Canada is looked at by China, I'm sure, by the European Union, the globalists, and by the Zionist portion of the cabal as a piece of meat, natural, rich with natural resources. Again, fresh water, minerals, oil and gas. They're going to come and get it somehow, some way. And that's what my dad said to me years ago in that boat fishing. Someday, it's going to happen. Now, I didn't think it was going to happen in our lifetime, but here we are. And when we look at that red and white Canadian flag that was created in 1967 or 66 and became a flag in 1967, it's not that old. It's not steeped in history, is what I'm saying. And maple leaf, how does that represent the entire country? There's no maple trees west of Ontario. Now, Vicky says, I'm not ready to have $1,200 a month health insurance bills. Okay, Vicky, let me give it to you like this. Because Trump is also talking now about removing all income tax, just taking it off, period. Like they have no taxes, no sales taxes in Florida, right? I'm not sure about income taxes in Florida, state income taxes, but they don't have any sales tax. If he takes the tax off, and even still, the tax rates that you pay in the United States are significantly lower than the tax rates you pay in Canada. Not just on income tax, everything, right? The reason our taxes are so high, and I believe I said this a couple of weeks ago on the show, but I'll repeat it. Every single province's budget, whether it's Alberta or Ontario or Quebec, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, whichever, at least 30% of their yearly budget. Let's just take Manitoba, for example. Manitoba's budget this year is $30 billion. $30 billion. 30% of that, $10 billion, is going to go to healthcare. Now, who do you think pays for that? You know, Jagmeet Singh and these Marxists running around the country, free healthcare, free dental, free pharma, free. It's not free. We're paying for all of that, and that's why our taxes are so ridiculously high. You pay, with all taxes in, provincial, federal, sales taxes, property taxes, all of the taxes that Canadians pay. You pay over 50% of your income, your gross income. Over 50% of your gross income yearly goes to taxes. In the United States, it's not that high, not even close, depending on what state you live in. So you go down there, you pay 30% instead of 50%. Well, with that 20% of your gross income, you may, and maybe not even that high, maybe 10%, maybe 15%, you get to go and pick your own health care provider. It's not provided by the state. So you go down there and you say, all right, I'm going to pay this much in health insurance. Well, the money you saved in taxes is going to that, and you get to pick it. And if you've got a job down there, your company might pay half of that. That's how that works. It's the same as a dental plan, a workplace dental plan up here in Canada with healthcare down there. Not in every case, but in many cases. The other thing, too, is if you want to talk about sports, we were talking about football earlier. Oh, the NFL's awesome. Buffalo. In Vancouver, it's all about the Seattle Seahawks. All the time, Seattle. What about the NHL? Do you honestly think that if Trump decides he wants to take all the income tax, not to mention, look at our dollar right now. All of these players are paid in United States dollars. So if Connor McDavid is making 10 million US a year, he's making more like 17 million Canadian. And all of the money they're taking in, these Canadian teams are coming in Canadian dollars. That conversion must be killing them. So let's just say that the Edmonton Oilers have got to sign Connor McDavid. He's at the end of his contract and he's a free agent, unrestricted. He can go anywhere he wants. Do you think that he's going to want to play in Canada, where he pays over 60, because he makes so much money, over 60% of his income in taxes? Or is he going to want to go and play someplace in the United States where there's no tax at all? He gets to keep all of that money. And better weather, too. Most of the time. Guys, what are we clinging to? And I ask that sincerely. I am not asking that rhetorically. I'm asking that very sincerely. What is Canada to you? Why do you want to stay here? And hey, if the United States comes to us, you don't even have to move. I think what's going to happen if Canada decides to do these dollar-for-dollar tariffs, that our economy is going to die within 3 or 4 months. That would be the end of it. The end of it. After a while, the world wouldn't even recognize Canada as a nation anymore because it's broke, flat broke. You can't go to the Bank of Canada. You can't go to the governor of the Bank of Canada and say, print me $200 billion right now. At some point, he's going to have to say, I'm sorry, man, I can't do that. We got a 10-cent dollar as it is. It's going to be like the peso, pretty much. Interest rates came down today, though. That's something. Here's Tiff Macklem, who is the governor of the Bank of Canada.
Today, we lowered our policy interest rate by 25 basis points. This is our 6th consecutive decrease and brings the policy rate to 3%. We also announced our plan to complete the normalization of our balance sheet, ending quantitative tightening. The bank will restart asset purchases in early March, beginning gradually so that its balance sheet stabilizes this year and then begins to grow modestly in line with economic growth. In recent months, inflation has remained close to 2%, consumer expectations have largely normalized, and there is no longer evidence of broad-based inflationary pressures. Shelter price inflation remains elevated, but is gradually coming down. U.S. trade policy is a major source of uncertainty. There are many possible scenarios. There's a lot we don't know. We don't know what new tariffs will be imposed, when, or how long they will last. We don't know the scope of retaliatory measures or what fiscal supports will be provided. A long-lasting and broad-based trade conflict would badly hurt economic activity in Canada. At the same time, the higher cost of imported goods will put direct upward pressure on inflation. As we consider our monetary policy response, we will need to carefully assess the downward pressure on inflation from weakness in the economy and weigh that against the upward pressure on inflation from higher input prices and supply chain disruptions. Having restored low inflation and reduced interest rates substantially, monetary policy is better positioned to help the economy adjust to new developments. As always, the bank will be guided by our monetary policy framework and our commitment to maintain price stability over time.
I don't know how he can actually say that. It's funny to me. Price stability over time. I don't believe that President Trump is playing around right now. I think I said this last night on the show. I'm not sure if I said it on social media or if I said it on the extension after 9 o'clock or 9:30, whenever it was last night. He's not playing around. He's going to make an example of us. He's going to make an example of Mexico, and the rest of the world is going to go, ooh, okay. He's not playing around. If he could do that to Canada, he could do that to us. Here's a story from the NP today. Now, it's funny. Team Trudeau. We're going down to Washington. We're going to straighten out this mess finally once and for all. Donald Trump does not take any of these people seriously. The only person he does take seriously is Danielle Smith. We'll hear from her in just a second. Public Safety Minister Jonathan Wilkinson heading to Washington to convince Trump administration the border is secure. Well, I will say this. It looks like they've been doing a little bit more at the border. They've got game wardens now monitoring the Manitoba, North Dakota, Minnesota border. It's true. Game wardens. Yep. Canada's public safety minister is heading to Washington tomorrow in an effort to convince U.S. President Donald Trump's administration that the Canada-U.S. border is secure as the clock ticks down on Trump's threat of slapping 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. It's not about the border at this stage of the game. Well, maybe it is and maybe it's not. Part of it is and part of it isn't. Trump wants to make a show. Yes, he does want the border secure. There's a guy called Howard Lutnick, and he was confirmed as the new Commerce Secretary today. Listen to what he has to say about why Trump is imposing these tariffs and when these tariffs will be imposed.
The big tariff view is going to be studied, and the president launched that in an executive order where he asked the Commerce Department and the USTR to study the tariff model long term. The short term issue is illegal migration and, worse even still, fentanyl coming into this country and killing over 100,000 Americans. There's no war we could have that would kill 100,000 Americans. The president is focused on ending fentanyl coming into the country. You know that the labs in Canada are run by Mexican cartels. So this tariff model is simply to shut their borders with respect America. If we are your biggest trading partner, show us the respect, shut your border, and end fentanyl coming into this country. So it is not a tariff per se. It is an action of domestic policy. Shut your border and stop allowing fentanyl into our country, killing our people. So this is a separate tariff to create action from Mexico and action from Canada. And as far as I know, they are acting swiftly. And if they execute it, there will be no tariff. And if they don't, then there will be. But it's an action-oriented model. That's not the ordinary tariff. The ordinary tariffs need to be studied and examined, and that will start, as the EO said, in April.
So that's a separate tariff.
Correct.
After that study, what would be the timeline of that?
I think that's sort of in April. Those studies will come out in the end of March and April, and then you'll hear about those at that time. So big macro issues with tariff are being studied, but the micro issue is Canada and Mexico and the precursors from China. They need to end, and we need to protect our Americans from fentanyl. And our trading partners in Canada and Mexico, they should end it and stop disrespecting us and allowing this come through our borders.
Well, I think we all agree on secure borders. I'm with you all the way. Being a northern border state, the ranking member on Homeland Security, we want to do that.
Yeah, so we could escape the February 1 tariff if Trump can be convinced that Canada's done enough to close that border down. And, I mean, like I said, there's game wardens patrolling the Manitoba-ND-Minnesota border right now. I'm not sure what's going on in Saskatchewan or Alberta or BC or Ontario, if they've increased their border security down there or not. But I know that Manitoba, they got game wardens on the job, baby. Doug Ford announced an election in Ontario today. And the reason for this, my friends, is we need to show a united, strong front to the Americans. We're going to shut down their power if they screw with us. Here is Doug Ford talking about that very thing today. We need strength.
Since we're at the border, is this more or less a referendum on who's the strongest leader to be able to deal with tariffs, Trump, whoever, whatever's coming at you from the U.S.?
It's twofold here. Is leadership, and leadership. And who do you trust to take care of the people of Ontario and the businesses and the workers when times get tough? And they're going to get tough. Do you trust the other parties that all they believe is tax and spend? Or do you believe in the PC party that's going to support you? We're going to put tens of billions of dollars into the economy, just like we did during the pandemic. There's experience on one side with the PC party and zero experience with the other three parties. I'll tell you who I'm betting on. I'm betting on the PC party.
Yeah, you're going to throw billions into the economy out of thin air. Inflation. These guys just don't get it. They just don't get it. We're going to be strong. They're going to, tariffs, we're going to have to support our workers. We're going to have to support our businesses. We're going to create money out of thin air. And we'll put it into the economy. Death knell, baby. I think the only one we can take seriously is probably Danielle Smith. Where's Danielle?
Since we're at the border, is this
No,
more?
that's Doug Ford. Maybe this is Danielle. Let's check.
Today, U.S. President Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary nominee, Howard Lutnick, stated during his confirmation hearing that, quote, "If we are your biggest trading partner, show us the respect, shut your border. This is a separate tariff to create action from Mexico and action from Canada. As far as I know, they are acting swiftly, and if they execute it, there will be no tariff. And if they don't, then there will be." Let me say it again. The one thing that we can do this week, in just the next couple of days, to have the best chance to avoid tariffs is to show clear and unequivocal action to secure the border. This should start with the appointment of a Canadian border czar to work with the new American border czar to jointly crack down hard on fentanyl and illegal migrants. Is this likely to end the threat of tariffs entirely? I don't think so. I think there'll be other things that we will need to work on, and we will do so. But I am convinced, after speaking with dozens of elected U.S. representatives, administration officials, and the president himself, that this is the most important first step. Today, I reiterated this to the premiers, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Wilkinson, and Prime Minister Trudeau, and I hope it is acted on by the end of this week before February 1st.
Yeah, doubt it. They hate her. The Easterners hate her. Anything she says, they will do the opposite. You can bet. I want to show you some glaring differences now between the United States and America when it comes to social concerns, the ones that we've all been railing about now for the past 4 or 5 years, starting with this. Today, Donald Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law. It's a piece of legislation, his first piece of legislation, the Laken-Riley Act. The law mandates the federal detention of illegal immigrants who were accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury. A statement from Secretary Noem, Kristi Noem, on the signing of the bill. Thank you, President Trump, for signing the Laken-Riley Act. This law restores common sense to our broken immigration system. Under President Trump, violent criminals and vicious gang members will no longer be released into American communities. The Laken-Riley Act is named after a Georgia nursing student who was killed by a Venezuelan illegal alien, who was previously arrested and paroled into the U.S. under the previous administration. And here's Laken-Riley's mother today talking about this.
We also want to thank President Trump for the promises he made to us. He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. We trust that he will fight for the American people. Most importantly, I want to thank our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without his sacrifices, Laken's story would have ended on that horrific day that she was taken from us. But because of him, we can continue living knowing that we will see Laken again.
Still got crime rampant all through the streets of Canada. Now, granted, Pierre Poilievre has said, he said yesterday, I think it was, that these people, if they're here on visas or temporary work permits and they're doing crime in the streets, if they're protesting for Palestinians and they're yelling death to Canada, they got to go. So I'll give them credit for that. Definitely give them credit for that. What about those vaccines? Now, Alberta, their task force came out with their report the other day, and it's been soundly thumped on social media by the left wing, who claim it's anti-science, it's conspiracy theories, it's a bunch of quacks. Here's Bonnie Henry, who is the chief medical officer in British Columbia on the CBC last night.
But the political landscape has also shifted. I mean, in Alberta, you have a task force that Premier Daniel Smith commissioned to review Alberta's COVID-19 pandemic response and released its final report. That report was posted on Friday afternoon, and it recommends halting the use of COVID-19 vaccines without full disclosure of their potential risks, and the province to allow physicians to prescribe alternative treatment options for the virus, such as ivermectin and
ivermectin. And by the way, what is so terribly wrong with that? Nothing. It's just freedom of diagnosis for your doctor, freedom of choice for the patient. It is not at all a conspiracy theory, but watch.
Hydroxychloroquine. I mean,
hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, this is taking us back to, the dark times.
It is, and I think it's very unfortunate. I can see that, perhaps the government was not as enamored of these points of views as they were when they commissioned this report, in that they released it on a Friday afternoon. But it's clearly misinformation.
That's a big reach there, Bonnie.
About the vaccine, how effective it is, how safe it is, who it works in, how long it works. We have the consensus of science. And I absolutely agree. Science is changing over time. It's it's science in action, and we saw that through the pandemic. But there's no denying that we've had millions and millions and millions of people, actually billions of people, who've been vaccinated, who are protected. We know a lot of.
How is she saying that? This is yesterday. She is saying this on national television yesterday.
About how long it lasts, your immune system, about hybrid immunity. So to have a report like this is really, in some ways, embarrassing, and it's not kept up with what we know about vaccines, what we know about, ivermectin is an important medication for certain infections. It doesn't work against this virus, and I think that's very clear. So we need to have rational voices who come out and say, okay, this was a point of view from some people who had very strong opinions, but it's certainly not what we would expect most scientists to agree to or think these days.
Wouldn't it be great if you could take somebody like Bonnie Henry and put her on this show? And on the other side of the screen here's Bonnie here. And on the other hand, you got Byron Bridle, Dr. Byron Bridle. Or maybe just a comedian like Dave Smith. Remember going back to Patrick Bet-David's show, I think this was in July, when he called out, and this was allowed to happen on United States media, when he called out Chris Cuomo, formerly of CNN, for making fun of Joe Rogan and ivermectin. It's been public knowledge for a very long time that ivermectin does, in fact, have an impact on this virus. Watch.
And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like it.
You did it.
No. Okay,
yes, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
clips. You said
clips.
he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No,
I'll go find
first
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
the point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and it's absolutely
look,
there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You talk about, cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now, Chris. Chris, you can't apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not being
You were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation where we were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was going to do to them.
PBD had some of the veterinary grade ivermectin on his desk. That's what they were pointing at there. But you got a chance to call out one of the biggest loudmouths, one of the biggest shamers during the COVID years right there. You had him by the throat. Do we get to do that up here? Oh, no. None of them have the balls to come on a show like this and defend themselves because they know they can't answer the hard questions. Speaking about answering hard questions, well, more like rant. RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearings were today down in the United States. They want him, Trump wants him to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He had to go through a bit, notably with Elizabeth Warren, but let's have a look at what happened.
I got a real quick question for you. Are you a conspiracy theorist?
That is a pejorative, Senator, that's applied to me. Mainly to keep me from asking difficult questions of powerful interests. I was told that I was a conspiracy theorist. That label was applied to me because I said that the vaccines, the COVID vaccine, didn't prevent transmission and it wouldn't prevent infection when the government was telling people, Americans, that it would. I was saying that because I was looking at the monkey studies in May of 2020. I was called a conspiracy. Now everybody admits it. I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said red dye caused cancer. And now FDA has acknowledged that and banned it. I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said fluoride lowered IQ. Last week, JAMA published a meta-review of 87 studies saying that there's a direct inverse correlation between IQ loss.
All right, so I'm going to assume
I could go on for about a week.
So is there any one of them that you can say, you got me? That really was a conspiracy theory, or are you in a position to...
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
no,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
Companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS, and I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as Secretary will also benefit you financially down the line.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
you're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Look.
Vaccines save lives! Bobby's lives kill! Vaccines save lives!
His answers are he intends to continue to make money off his anti-vax position. Look, he says he won't go to work for drug companies because the American people have a right to know that the decisions made while he is Secretary of HHS are only for the good of the American people. And yet, he wants to keep a piece of the action on every one of these anti-vax lawsuits. And what that means potentially is as Secretary of HHS, he can make those lawsuits a whole lot more profitable. In fact, he may have the opportunity to bankrupt the vaccine manufacturers, and then nobody gets vaccine.
like a Kennedy needs money, first of all. And secondly, bankrupting these companies? Are you kidding me? Do you know how much money they're worth? Then again, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Speaking of money and Elizabeth Warren, while we're on the subject, let me throw this up on the screen here. This. Top 20 member recipients of money from pharmaceuticals health products from 2019-2020. Bernie Sanders is number one on the list at $1,417,633. And number two is her contributions now from Big Pharma. Elizabeth Warren. Oh, are you shocked? $822,573. The Americans are about to have a man as the Secretary of Health and Human Services who's not going to put up with the VBS any longer. Meanwhile, in Canada, Karma Sad put this video up earlier today. Terse discussions between the head of security at Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board and protesters about a hands-off our kids sign. The head of security wanted the people to leave. The people said no. Let's watch the video. I think I have it right here.
Asked to take the sign down. Please. You're being asked to take down the sign. It's not an option. And if you cannot follow the rules here, then you're going to be asked to leave.
Because you're being filmed right now, so I would call the police.
I'm not really worried about
You're not worried? Okay, then don't touch the sign.
Because I'm not doing anything.
Call the police. No, we're not either.
And I'm authorized to enforce the rules here.
Oh, really? You're enforce?
Yes, I am.
Okay, call the police. You can't enforce.
Why would you want me to do that?
Call the police.
So then what?
Have you called them already?
So then you
No, they won't arrest us.
Actually, if you're refusing to leave, that is a violation of the Trespass Property Act.
So call the police.
And at that point, you are committing a criminal.
Call the police.
I'm giving you an opportunity.
Be your friend.
He's already stated that sounds like this.
We're just expressing ourselves like you guys are.
You can, that's fine. This is
Flag, you got your rainbow flag? Look at this flag here. This is a beauty. We love this flag. We love it. And the writing's on the wall.
So the people with the rainbow flags and whatever that other flag is with all the arrows and the different colors, I have no idea. They're not being asked to leave, but these guys, hands off our children. You got to leave, you got to leave, you got to leave. He keeps saying, call the police. She wouldn't call the police, never did call the police. They stayed through the entire meeting, by the way. And I do have to say, hands off to you guys for doing that and refusing this woman's demands. She's a bully. That's how they do things in Canada. Sadly, most people will capitulate to these demands. Also in Canada, this story coming from TNC.news, Edmonton man charged after woman sexually assaulted in a shelter. Now look at this guy here. Take a close look at this guy. We're going to come back and look at him again. Edmonton police are on the lookout for more potential victims after charging a man who previously stayed at a woman's shelter with sexual assault. Why was he staying at a woman's shelter? Mika Cates, who's also been known as Michael Collins, was arrested Thursday after two women staying at the shelter reported being sexually assaulted in August, police said. The Edmonton Police Service did not identify Cates, 37, as transgender. Of course they didn't. But did release a mugshot showing him with long pink hair and a slight beard. There he is. Cates was previously arrested in September in connection with alleged sexual assaults of two other women at the shelter around the same time. Cates had been released with conditions including to not contact any of the alleged victims or be within 50 meters of any women's shelter in Alberta, as police have now received multiple reports related to separate events on different days. Investigators believe there may be additional complainants and are releasing Cates' photo to encourage them to come forward. But heaven forbid we should ever call him trans, because we don't do that in Canada. In the meantime, here's the founder of Gays Against Groomers and then a brave young woman who is detransitioning shortly thereafter. Let's watch this.
Hi, everybody. It's Jamie Michelle, the founder and president of Gays Against Groomers. I had to come on here and make a video because I am extremely overwhelmed with happiness right now. Today is an incredible day. It will go down in history for sure in the fight to end the war on children, as President Trump has signed an executive order titled Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation. Our organization, Gays Against Groomers, we have been fighting so hard every single day to get to this point. To have the President of the United States understand what is happening and how wrong it is and how barbaric these procedures are is a surreal feeling. I want to thank everybody who has stood with us in this battle. Because of you, we're able to fight. We don't have any big donors, and somehow we have managed to be that bull in a china shop that was needed from our community to stand up against what's happening to children in our name. And so, the fight continues. This will not be a total victory until it is codified into law that child sterilization and mutilation for minors is banned across the whole nation. But my God, is this a victory? This is cause for celebration. And the whole team at Gays Against Groomers, we are going to celebrate, but we are going to keep fighting very hard. So thank you so much to everybody. And, huge congrats to everybody who has worked so hard, not just in Gays Against Groomers, but there are so many warriors that we've met along the way here that are fighting just as hard. So thank you so much, and let's enjoy this moment.
I survived October 7th, and then I detransitioned. As a little kid, I was very interested in exploring niche medical topics, and when I was 12, just the idea of would it be possible for a woman to become a man? This question just entered my mind. I ended up going really deep, just obsessing, and I found myself pretty quickly in the land of pop culture, trans influencers. By the time I was 19, my parents had realized that my transgender identity was not going anywhere. They basically told me, you need to study abroad for a year in a non-Western country that doesn't promote all of this stuff. But on October 7th, I woke up to a siren at 8 in the morning, and then multiple rockets. I just didn't have time to put my breast binder on. I just had to layer on a bunch of shirts. I just had to run for it. I just had to run to a bomb shelter. As I was running, that everything I had thought about myself was wrong. I realized I had to feel my body moved unconstrained by the breast binder, and it was in those moments that I realized that there's nothing wrong with my body. My body is not a pathology. Transgenderism and gender dysphoria, really, this is fundamentally a first world problem.
Yeah. Libs of TikTok put something cool up today on X. Breaking. This was this morning. Irving School District, Texas administrator caught in undercover footage advising a parent on how to circumvent Texas law and allow boys to play in girls' sports. We can go ahead and play you a little of the video here. Rennie Lizardo. Oh, that's an appropriate name. Lizardo. The executive director of campus operations for Irving ISD met with an undercover journalist posing as the parent of a transgender girl, a male, to discuss how to allow her son to compete in girls' sports. He starts by complaining that Texas is too conservative.
I'm thinking of moving my daughter, who's transgender, to Texas in general. We have family out here, and we're just concerned about potential transphobia and bigotry and stuff like that.
Which you hear, Texas.
Yeah. I'm thinking of...
All right, so this thread goes through several videos. Rennie Lizardo recommends the parent change the birth certificate of their child from male to female in order to circumvent state law, and that's not illegal if you don't get caught. When confronted, Rennie lies and claims that he never made those statements.
Could you legally change a gender on a birth certificate? I don't know enough about that subject. Is that possible?
I believe in some places you can.
So if you can get that done, and you turn us a birth certificate that says this gender, that's the gender we go with.
Okay, so if we can get it changed on...
That's a, yeah.
On any kind of record, like a state record, and it says female, so then my daughter would be able to play on the girls' sports team then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a lawyer.
Sure, sure.
And you know, Texas is super conservative.
Right.
So, how do I say this legally? If it's not illegal if you don't get caught, right? Like,
Right.
if no one knew,
Right.
then we're good. But if a parent from if a parent found out, or a
Right.
student found out and said,
Right.
"Wait a second, this person isn't this gender,"
Right.
and they sued the district, we'd be in trouble.
Okay.
But we can also say, we didn't know.
We didn't know.
Right.
Okay.
So
yeah.
there's a plausible deniability, I guess. It's kind of like
okay.
who knows this information and how
Right.
how little amount of people can.
Okay.
Did you tell a parent that if they just changed the birth certificate out of state before they moved in, that their child would be able to compete?
I've never had a conversation like that before.
Never had a conversation like that?
No. I've had a parent come and ask me what something like that would look like. I told them we have no idea. I let them know that in Irving. Am I being interviewed right now?
Yeah. You also told the parent that it's not illegal if you don't get caught. Is that the message that this district likes to convey to people?
No, that's not what I said. That's something that I never said.
that?
No.
I don't know yet if this guy's fired, but he should be. You see, right now, this is the big difference between the United States and Canada. People doing that kind of crap up here, oh man, it's encouraged, it's funded, it's supported by the media, by government, by NGOs, by brainwashed people out there. And we have to live with it. We have to live with men in women's shelters, and these men maybe, sexually assaulting these women. Same with prisons. Now, Pierre Poilievre has said kind of quietly just the other day, well, there's only 2 genders that I know of. Can you name any others? He said that in an interview. Forget who he was being interviewed by. It doesn't always CP24 in Toronto. But that's pretty much as he said. Can you imagine Pierre Poilievre ever saying anything about the vaccines, about the mandates, ever coming out and apologizing? Ever recognizing those who have been injured by that crap and then funding their needs, getting them medical attention? Of course not. This is the difference right now between Canada and the United States. We keep fighting. I want you guys to know this above everything else. We keep fighting for as long and as hard as we possibly can. But ultimately, who knows what's going to happen? I just believe that Canada is a prize that's being eyed up by China, by the globalist cabal, and they might be on the same team, and by Trump's team. And it's not going to remain. Canada will not remain. And you can mark my words on this. And I'm going to say by the end of the year, Canada will not remain an independent country. This is what we have been talking about. It's either going to go to the globalists or it's going to go to the United States. And I'm sorry to tell you that. That's what I think. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see any defense here for us. I mean, you talk about going to the United States, going down to Washington and saying, hey, these tariffs, you can't do that. Why not? Well, because we'll tariff you back. Whatever, mosquito bite compared to what we're going to do to you. We'll swat the mosquito, and then we'll just take whatever we want anyway. No military action required. No shots fired, no blood spilled. The globalists will do the same thing. And if Mark Carney gets in as prime minister and then is allowed to stay in as prime minister, he'll sell us out to the globalists in Europe and the European Union. Which one do you want? Sorry to tell you this, you guys. And those of you who are thinking emotionally right now are probably yelling at your screen going, shut up! I can't take it anymore, Shadow. How could you say such a thing? You're not a patriot. Yeah, I am. But I'm also a realist. We cannot withstand an economic attack from either the European Union or the United States, or China for that matter, if they decide to start turning the screws. We can't. All right. I want to leave you guys with kind of a funny story tonight. After all this serious chit-chat, let's have some laughs. From left-wing corporate CTV News, residents of Ottawa's Trump Avenue might try again to rename street after U.S. President's tariffs threats. Residents of Trump Avenue in Ottawa's Central Park neighborhood may once again look to change the street's name following the re-election of Donald Trump. Trump's recent comments about Canada, combined with a threat of potential tariffs, have left some residents questioning the legacy of the name. The neighborhood, which includes other streets named after New York City icons like Gramercy Park, Staten Way, Bloomingdale Street, was established in the 1990s when Trump was still a prominent real estate mogul rather than a controversial president. Joe Cook, who bought his home on Trump Avenue in 2001, says politics were not in play at the time. When you walk around, you see the names of all kinds of streets, Cook said. This was in honor of him, but really it was just another New York name. Donald Trump gets nailed a little bit for something he had nothing to do with, but now Cook and some of his neighbors may be veering towards an avenue of change, given the name has become increasingly problematic. Since his election win, Trump has threatened Canada with new tariffs of upwards of 25%, blah, 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 blah. In early 2021, residents voted on the possibility of changing the street name. The result was a 21-21 tie, with 20 households abstaining, which left the matter unresolved. In Ottawa, changing a street name requires approval from at least 50% plus one of the households on the street. With 62 homes on Trump Avenue, 32 votes are needed for the change to proceed. We voted to rename the street because of what it's come to stand for, said Cook. And when I say that, I'm not trying to pillory Donald Trump, but in terms of the principles that he promulgates and the way that he's running the country now, especially now, there's no way that I'd want him in charge of our country or of a country that I was living in for sure. They're going to try and do it again. They'll probably get their way, probably get Trump's name removed from the street, but so what? Trump will just come in and put his name back up there anyway. All right. That's it for the show tonight, you guys. Thank you for being here. I appreciate support. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I will catch you again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. The extension begins for all access pass holders on shadowdavis.com in 2 minutes. I'll see you soon.